When a prescribed burn is conducted, the block edges are normally burned first to help contain the fire. The internal part of the block is then ignited by aerial incendiary drops in a grid pattern, usually with 100 or 200 metre spacings. This is typically done in 1 or 2 successive afternoons. In the Styx burn, a pyrocumulonimbus cloud formed. These clouds normally only form during intense wildfires. The prescribed fire severely damaged the various habitats within the Styx block, and the impact this has had on fauna is yet to be determined.
It's pretty interesting to come out to a spot like this that hasn't been burnt for 60 odd years and look at the diversity here and have an understanding of what that diversity will support. If you're thinking about the animals that might live here, and that's everything from, you know, ants and scorpions and spiders right through to our, what we call big, cute, cuddly animals like kangaroos and possums and things like that. One of the key attributes you're looking for in their habitats is structural complexity. You've got these big old trees, you know, the overstory. They've got branches broken off. Well, that creates hollows for birds and possums and lizards. Things like bandicoots and a lot of the small reptiles don't go up trees. They're stuck on the ground. So the importance of this sort of stuff is, I mean, for a start, this swordgrass is really sharp and nasty to touch, which provides good protection for an animal that wants to forage in amongst it. The litter's probably 5 to 10 centimetres deep. The duff underneath that, you know, the litter that's broken down over the last 60 years, that might be another 5 or 10 centimetres deep. But that'll stay damp right through the hottest summers. You know, you can come out here in the middle of summer on a 40-degree day, not that we get many of those in Denmark, and have a dig, and there'll be moisture down there. The bugs and things that live in there that the other animals eat and that help break it down and help transfer the nutrients into the soil for the plants around us, they'll only be there if it's moist. A single bandicoot will turn over something like 4 or 5 tonne of earth a year. One bandicoot. That's 4 or 5 tonne of earth that's been dug up and put on top of the leaf litter next to it. As that decomposes, it increases the availability of soil moisture. Having all this stuff dug through by these little animals, bandicoots and woylies and some of the birds, even just the lizards scratching through it, you know, promotes that water retention, reduces the flammability. In my opinion, once you take that layer out, you've put an axe right through the middle of the ecological function of the bush. If you look at the rest of the bush in comparison to that other site, there's less complexity in the age of the trees. There's a few big old trees, but the majority are probably smaller than 20 centimetres. That just speaks to an imbalance in the tree age, which is going to express itself over the next 40, 50, 60, 80, 100 years. If you look at the mid-story, there's a lot of acacia. There's a lot of these things popping up. Like there's lots of juvenile jarrah. They're popping up because there's opportunity. So more sun's got to the ground and they've been grabbed an opportunity, which turns it into a dense piece of bushland, far denser than the other site was. And then you get to the real nuts and bolts of it, the ground level. The other site, we had those really complex tangles of rushes that the leaf litter had built up in, and we talked about them making a nice little cage that a small animal could hide in. Where is it? It just doesn't exist here.
Reducing fuel loads is the main driver of the government's prescribed burning policy. But what is fuel and how is it measured? A litter depth of 5 centimetres is indicative of approximately 2.5 tonnes per hectare. In jarrah forest, an average amount of fuel accumulation over 20 to 50 years is thought to be about 20 tonnes per hectare, equating to a litter depth of 40 centimetres. What we are told is that the longer the time since last fire, the more the fuel would have accumulated and the greater the need to burn the bush. Forests that have not seen fire for 6 years or more are viewed as a major threat to communities.
We are in Clear Hills block, which is planned to be burned very soon, this spring. There's hardly any leaf litter, and rather than leaf litter on the ground, what we've seen is a lot of turned over sand. The substrate is actually very sandy here, and there are diggings everywhere where animals have been digging and obviously turning over the litter. And we can also see pretty fresh scats, which we think are probably quokka.
We're here having a look at fuel accumulation over 9 years. And when you dig down here, there is leaf litter, dry leaf litter on top. Underneath, you get sort of moist, half broken down leaf litter. And below that you get sand with roots. That's all we've got here. And so the perception of fuel accumulating and building over years, like what you read everywhere, is a misconception. When you go out on country and you look at different ages since last burned, you find that in long unburned country this looks very similar. There is very little leaf litter.